and sit down.
Welcome to Stu and the Nunn, an online radio show and podcast focused on national security, policy, politics, and selfless service. We're here to give you an honest opinion, a different perspective, and hopefully a few laughs. We do this by not only interviewing guests, but also sharing our own perspectives and asking you, the listener, to interact with us on the show chat room, via our Facebook page, and on Twitter. We would like to thank those who make this show possible and allow us to bring it to you. Our show sponsors, Warrior Media Solutions, BlueHammer.com, Mighty Oaks Warrior Foundation, Graybeard Publishing, and of course, Sheepdog Productions. We would also like to recognize some of our favorite nonprofit charities who are doing great things for those who have served this country of ours. Veterans Outdoors, Mighty Oaks Warrior Foundation, PinUpsForVets.com, and the Lauren F. Bruner USS Arizona Memorial Foundation. To learn more about these nonprofits and how you can donate to their awesome causes, visit our website at www.stuandthenunn.com.
Shut up.
And with that, everyone, welcome to another episode of Stu and the Nunn. Nunn is not here tonight, but my good brother from another mother, Shard, or Doug Mullen, also from Gear for Grunts, founder of the Gear for Grunts Tactical Gear Company, is joining me tonight. Doug has been a guest and a guest host on here many times, and with a little bit different than tonight, we also have a very special guest, also a past guest many times, Mr. Scott Kesterson on the show tonight. And Scott is out somewhere very remote. If you're watching on Facebook, you can see that he is looks like he's in the Wild West, but he's out somewhere, and they're having to pump in some Wi-Fi to him or some cell service. So we want to get right on this and welcome Scott right into the show. So in case we lose him, we get as much time as possible. So we are not going to screw around. We'll worry about monologues and epilogues and all of those logs later on if we have the time to do it. But it's more important to talk to our guests. So first, I want to welcome Doug to the show. And second,
hey everyone,
thanks
for having me.
Yep.
Great to be here, Troy.
And welcome
Great
Scott
to
back
you
to
here,
the show
Scott.
too. Hey Scott, how
Yeah.
you doing?
Absolutely.
Hey. Thanks for having me.
Yep, no problem. All right, we got a little bit of audio, so I asked people to stay with us tonight, as we may have some audio issues that come up, but just stay with us. We already have a contingency plan. Those are those familiar with the
You
military.
have a redundant commo plan.
We do.
That's fantastic.
We do. So we don't mess around here. This is we may be bush league a lot of times, but every once in a while we get our shit right, and maybe tonight we can get that going. So. All right. Well, Scott, hey, welcome back to the show, man. You have been busy. You have been involved. You and I have been involved in known each other for a very long time. 11 years now. 10 years ago this year, we came back from Afghanistan, and 11 years we've known each other, and have been very, very good friends that whole time. We've done a lot together. And now, but you have a new exciting adventure you've been on since the election, and you have taken a new turn, and we're excited to talk to you about it tonight. So again, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Troy, for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Great to be here.
absolutely. So let's hold on a second. I am.
So how's the
Go ahead.
audio? Is it coming through okay?
Yeah, it's a little choppy. It's coming through okay. I think we will piece enough to get it together. If we start losing you a lot, I'll let you know.
How is the audio?
The video we got you. It's a little chopped,
Okay.
but the audio is really what's most important. I want people to make sure they hear your message for sure.
Absolutely.
But so give us a little bit about what the American brand is, and kind of why you started it, and then really what this new thing called Expedition Red is. And I have your Twitter tag up there, and we'll talk about your website and all that in a little bit.
Cool. So I'm going to talk a little slower tonight, just like if we're having problems with Russian interference. That seems like a good theme these days in the media.
That's
So
awesome.
that's happening. So American brand is, by definition, a next generation media, education outreach, and organization that I set up last fall and have been building out of the work that we did under Kilroy Rising PAC in the election for our President Donald J. Trump. The Kilroy Rising PAC I started about a year ago, and the intent was to do an outreach to a lot of the more fringe elements of the right and the rural communities that were heavily disenfranchised politically. And in the process, we had really an amazing tour. If those want to read a little bit about Kilroy Rising, you can go to Breitbart News, type in my name and Kilroy Rising, and you'll see a letter of endorsement we gave to President Donald J. Trump with 124 special operators' names underneath that. Most of them were NCOs, which is a pretty amazing statement in itself. That project led to the Deplorables tour, where we spent 40 days traveling through all the Rust Belt states and going to a lot of the very devastated, economically devastated rural communities. And I will tell you, I left that project, all of us did, moved and changed. I thought I knew my country until I did that, and I realized I didn't know anything the way I thought America was. The economic devastation of globalization, the concentration of tech industry into the blue zones, and the exportation of industry overseas left so many of these small towns literally decimated. And with that went a lot of the hope, and we see all the consequential problems that came with that, from drug abuse to just the degradation of the interior of a lot of these small towns, loss of populations, and on and on. So the American brand it picks up from that point, and it's designed to, what I'm doing right now is, from a military terms, would be phase zero operations. Literally moving out across the country and establishing the shaping part of this, what's going to be a very intense, and what we're hoping to build is probably one of the permanent red state political organizations over the next 4 to 5 years. And in the part of this phase, what I'm doing is effectively doing an embed in the United States, which is, I got some interesting, for those of you that know my background a little bit, and I was the first embedded citizen journalist in Afghanistan before I went over to work with special operations. I won an Emmy for my work in 2007, and this is an extension of that sort of embed, to go back into the country, into now our country, and to literally spend the next 8 months camping and moving town to town, seeing not only the natural spaces around our rural space of America, but getting involved in engagements and talking to local communities to find out really what's happening and telling those stories on a daily basis. So I'm doing 2 shows a day plus additional shows on YouTube, and ultimately move this into some sort of a form of a documentary. And all of this is leading to the launch of what we're calling American Brand TV, which will start launching late summer, early fall, and we can talk more about that in a minute. And then there's 3 other critical pillars to what the American Brand's operation's about. I'll kind of throw it back to you, Troy, and we can continue the conversation.
Yeah, I didn't realize that that this is all culminating, or could culminate, in a documentary, and kind of the same stuff you did in Afghanistan, where you helped tell, shape the narrative, where you engaged with local nationals in Afghanistan to help get the story out and help understand what drove them and what motivates them. You're essentially taking that same thing and doing it here in westernized United States of America. Are there a lot of parallels, or are the differences still vary?
Oh, there's a lot of parallels. I would say that, anybody that reads the statistics and understands insurgency knows that we're sitting on a very critical cusp in the country. And it's no joke. I mean, if you talk to people within the blue bubbles of the main cities, they'll act like everything's normal. But the fact of the matter is that desperation is kind of the key word when you get out into rural America. And the lack of being heard has culminated to a point prior to the election that was very critical for our own stability. One of the biggest problems is that the folks out here have never been exposed to the sort of methods and capabilities that you can do with a good information campaign, be that direct engagement, be that use of social media, and also understanding what type of systems have been deployed against them. Our mainstream media is nothing more than a very sophisticated psyop and propaganda arm of the global elite. I wish I could say that this was a conspiracy theory. It's not. And when you look at the mechanisms and tools that they use, they are implementing the same type of methodology that goes into any good psyop program. And the attempt is to completely break the will and back of the value base of this culture, which is rooted in red state. So when I talk about this program in terms of what the American brand is doing, the American brand is fighting the propaganda war, doing it with the values and integrity that are rooted deep in the American culture, rooted deep in red state, and giving that re-empowerment to be able to push back, not through violence, but through very well-organized and sophisticated mechanisms that start getting people to use and deploy, so that we can continue the march to ensure that the Constitution stays valid and that we continue to have a country based on state rights and individual freedoms, essentially the inalienable rights guaranteed in our Constitution.
So, hey Scott, this is Doug. So just looking at the topography where you are, speaking of red states, can you tell us where you are? Since I see one individual in the background the whole time you've been talking, so it's obviously a sparsely, non-densely populated area. And what's your mission there, at least particularly today?
Sure. This is Mitchell, Oregon. It's a small town that was a booming town in the late 1800s. In fact, this town here, which now is little more than just has a Oregon hotel, which was, I'm going to do a live podcast tonight. It's got a restaurants and a little general store. This town used to have 3 mills. It had 2 or 3 brothels. It had 3 or 4 saloons. It had an assayer's office for the value of property and so forth. This was a booming central place in Eastern Oregon that industry changes, and that happens with small towns. But most importantly, what's happened here is we've seen the assault on the logging industry and a lot of the environmental moves to block out ranching and other things. This town has over time dwindled down to where there just isn't much industry. Part of being in this project and going through Expedition Red is to touch these small towns, and there's a couple of key things that come with that. One is we're challenged tonight. We're pretty lucky, but we're getting a variable signal. Just to kind of put that in context, I drove for an hour to get here, and there was no signal for an hour. And then I arrive at one little town that has a bubble. It's run by an RMZ, which is a remote mobile zone put up by AT&T that bubbles this entire community of about 145 people. And then you literally leave out of this by about, I'd say a quarter mile, and you drop to zero signal until you hit your next little town, which is called Dayville. Why those become important is because it's a challenge in red state of connectivity. Fundamentally, part of this story is looking at how we connect and how we have to connect. When you get into blue zones, there's no question of the digital and the internet capabilities. When you get into rural communities, digital connectivity is it's limited, and that means people communicate and engage differently. Very much traditional, a lot more face-to-face. There's even, surprisingly, you'll even find newspapers are still pretty active, though they might be 1 week, people read it. So there's a different way of consuming information, and that in part is part of this process of shaping is a very critical point of understanding, to understand not only the challenges to communicate, but what those challenges can mean in terms of turning that into a strength.
Yeah, and to your point from watching, I think one of your recent videos, you basically said it's an information war, and everything you had just said, sort of speaks to that. Not just the message, but like what you're just talking about now, just even the ability to communicate and get plugged in and be exposed to information in areas such as where you are right now. And looking at that, Scott, you could be broadcasting from San Angelo, Texas right now, and it looks a lot like that, out in a little bit western, more arid Texas, where kind of again to your point about the devastation of globalism and the after effects. It's either in Oregon or all around Texas and all different cardinal directions from where I am here in Central Texas. I could go out, I could drive an hour, and it'll look just like that. I could go to Taylor, Texas, and it's like the same same scene, unfortunately.
It really is, and it's a sort of thing that it seems if you talk to folks that are really deep in, you notice I use blue and red, and I do that for a very particular reason. I do not, even by partisan politics that we have, a polar party system. Look at the geographic map of the United States based on counties and the election. And I think it speaks volumes to where this country sits. Many of those are in the Midwest, which like Democrat, but part of that, it's not so much about a particular candidate as it is about values. Blue drives a value set, globalization, of global citizenship, of open borders. Red drives a value set of faith, of belief in the Constitution, individual rights. Blue is collectivist. Red is individual rights. And you get into borders, our nation state definition, red, and you get into putting American values, American business, American jobs first. That also means resource management versus no resource use at all, which is the environmentalist activity of the left. So there's really a very interesting split that's occurred that is less defined politically by party and much more defined geographically. So as we move through here and you see what's happened to these small towns, and small towns come and go. We know that as places change, but there's an absolute acceptance that that's normal and necessary when you talk to folks in the blue zones. When you talk to folks out here, I will tell you frankly, it's a pretty thing. There's no way in hell they're leaving their small towns. So the challenge is how can we start to offset some of this blue push and bring the opportunities back to these small towns, and what can we do to revitalize that belief in the small town of America? And that gets to the core missions of the American brand over time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Just hearing you talk that, I'm kind of a history buff, and a lot of what you said, I know, there's never an exact comparison between now or, into the past, but there's definitely parallels, and kind of what you described almost sounds like the South and the North generically, in our own Civil War experience, where you have a more rural, agriculturally based part of the country. We'll just call it the South. Not to say that parts of that did not exist in what we'd call the North, but and facing off against a more industrialized, built-up city, quote unquote, more maybe advanced or cosmopolitan. Probably looking down their nose on more rural people, and it just kind of everything you described just kind of like, man, we could be having this conversation 130 years ago, and it just seems like a lot of the sort of the common problems, common challenges still exist, across the span of time.
Is this history just repeating itself, Scott? Is that all it is? Is it purely just that happening all over again?
Well, I think I think that it's historically, I agree. There is a repeat in history going on. The difference between the North and South is we didn't have the entire West settled at that point in time. But I don't think that we've ever lost the conflict between the high urban sectors and the rural area. Mm-hmm. And more in my work and what will be coming out of some forthcoming writings that I'm doing is we've seen a revival of blue zones exist because red is there, because they see red. Blue produces things that are based on intangible products, the intellectual property, a lot of the banking capital, and the only means of communication. Those are very critical. Work and the labor we produce something, and that aspect is something that blue just takes for granted and looks at red as its fuel. so that blue can chase, while red is anchored in building a better future for conflicts, I think have always been there. And the irony is if you look at the mechanisms of banking, which are two very powerful aspects out of blue zones, which would be equivalent to the and own predominant means of banking. So that's always been a challenge here, and in social problems that we have now.
I guess one thing that gets me.
Are we there?
One thing that gets me, Scott, is that you are, again, you're touring across America. I know you're going to mostly red places, and that's kind of the whole thing behind Expedition Red, which I want you to talk about in a second.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Scott? Can you guys hear me?
I hear you, Troy.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, Scott, can you hear me? You got me, Scott?
I still have you, Troy.
Okay, good. All right. So I want you to talk a little bit about Expedition Red here a little bit more, but I understand you're mostly going to red zones, if you would, or red states, but I'm assuming you've had to run into left-leaning people or even independents, if you would, and folks like that. And what has your interaction been there as you've talked about this, or has it been hostile feedback like we see a lot of the times in the rural areas when anyone of a differentiating opinion speaks up, or has it been people approaching you more moderately that are listening to what you're saying, trying to understand why you're trying to understand why your car is painted that way, that kind of thing?
Okay, so I get a lot of questions from people that are independents about what the car is about, and they want to know about what the project's about. And the discussion ends up being very common in the sense that there's a lot of people out here that are not aligning politically, that don't feel like they have a home. So that's an interesting component. It's a lot more commonality than there is difference. When we get some of the harder core left feelings, once they read the car of America First Tour, avoid. They don't want to talk about it, which is classic left to begin with. They can't get the narrative on terms. They either avoid or they go violent. Now, okay, but Oregon's a blue state, basically under blue, and the rest of the state is the town and accord. So what with here is with red is truly a red perspective on politics, and that's important because you're not going to see that come out in the presidential election. You're not going to see that come out anywhere else because politics here is driven primarily by Portland, and the rules of the legislative representation somewhere back a few years ago that now it's constantly and perpetually to the favor of the blue zones, the way that the representatives are changed. So there's a lot of frustration in this state, and it's very representative when you get out into these areas of not being well represented. And so traveling through the red counties in a blue state is very important because you really are going to get a different vibe completely on the challenges that they face overall. Does that help, Troy?
Yeah, it does. It's interesting you mentioned that because, as you know, I live in New York, and New York City drives everything here, drives the politics, it drives the funding and all that. But you go anywhere, if you go anywhere off the thruway, if you're not in Buffalo, Albany, Syracuse, or New York City, you are in country. I mean, there's stars and bars that fly out there. I see them all the time in upstate New York. If you go to Illinois, if you're not in Chicago, there's a lot of country out there. It's country, working folk,
Rural, yeah.
blue collar areas. And it seems like that way. And so you go to Michigan. Yeah. If you're not in Detroit, if you're not in that area, you go upstate, anywhere else in Michigan, it's very, very hard working folks, right? The flyover states. So that makes sense. So are you targeting cities? Are you targeting just anywhere but those cities? Are you going to give the voice to the everyone else in the state population? Is that essentially what you're doing?
So to start with, what I go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm done.
Okay. Oregon started here because originally what I was going to do was to do this thing in terms of coast to coast. So I've ended up in a blue state running red counties only. As this is morphed, hearing the voice of red counties and blue states is super important. And I will tell you that, on the website, we've got the map out of where this goes. And the way I built this originally is I took all of the red states and I broke them up in a socioeconomic profile. And it's somewhat generalized, but you'll see that there's a theme for each of the legs. There's 7 legs in this tour, and I did that. There's a couple of reasons I did that. When the Confederacy routed the North from Atlanta, and I did that because all odds were against them, and they won by taking. And the themology of that particular battle was really part of what we're faced with in Red State. Challenge based on taking all the disparate different militias in Atlanta and to be able to organize them into sophisticated attacks to be able to rout the North. And it was accomplished. Heavy loss, but they did it. It was an amazing victory. And so it's a battle in terms of kind of the sort of sophisticated challenges we face now in organizing a lot of disparate different communities to be able to put together a solid information war. So there's the theme. The connected piece of the 7 tours, if you look at that, each one has a socioeconomic uniqueness to it. So this flag I call the pioneers, and this is really going along this route into a lot of the original pioneer spirit and a lot of the pioneers that communities itself. I go out of Montana, when I anchor into Montana, then I leave from there. The second leg is going to be Clark leg, and looking at that. And then the another leg, it's what I call cheese wheels, and it's going to be going through Wisconsin, and it's going to go into West Virginia and Pennsylvania, and it's going to look at some of those hard industries that built America. And so each one of these has a unique element to it in themology of what I'm moving with. But I will tell you that even though the Expedition Red is built on those states, as this goes forward, as we expand into what I call American brand TV, and we can talk about that in a minute, there's going to be a lot of emphasis placed on giving voice to the red counties that are in blue states because they need a voice and they don't have one. And that's going to be one of our biggest challenges going forward in 2018 and 2020.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, just how you sort of, it's, again, getting back to your sort of tactical analysis of the situation, it sounded like that was part of it in terms of your socio-economic sort of demographic scrub, if you will, of prior to making your plans or your analysis. So that sounds pretty much right out of some sort of tactical operation or tactics, I should say. So that sounds pretty interesting. I just kind of wanted to follow up on you had mentioned that you had this like big dead zone between, you drove an hour or something to get to where you are, where you actually have a communication bubble. You basically have some sort of cell, if you will, that you stepped in and you're able to communicate with us this way. It made me, it caused me to remember, I believe it was, I don't know, Troy, help me out if you remember this stuff, but it was like late 90s, maybe early 2000s, maybe even up to like 10 years ago. We heard all this stuff about we've got to get high-speed internet to the rural communities. And, I don't know how Uncle Sam defined it, what a rural community is, and how whatever amounts of money were actually spent actually went to, you know, whatever it was supposed to be intended to. So that just kind of reminded me of that. So it would be interesting as you continue to journey around to kind of see. It doesn't sound like, at least where you are, that the funds sort of didn't reach where you are, and it'd be interesting to see how pervasive this problem is throughout these type of communities that you're focused on. Really is.
So I think it's interesting. I think it's a bigger issue than internet. So internet's pretty much available at any community, whether you get a dish internet, or whether you, like in Montana, I give on hands down an incredible amount of credit, because they have wired that entire state with every community with fiber.
Wow.
Yes, Montana with a population of about 200 and a school population of about 60 had fiber optic in the school. Amazing. Okay. The bigger is self-service, because so much of what we're doing, if you look at the way information is now, is through smartphone. So the question is, what's your accessibility? If you're relying on the internet as a desktop system, you're going to age in the news and consume it that way. But if you're able to use your cell phone, that means right, and to consume news that way. That is what I track the most, because when that is void, that means there's a different mechanism. So I mean, the news value, the information value, the day-to-day consumption of value, when people are consuming news, also are critical to understand, because they're not like anything in the city. We can go through a city and be inundated every day with our apps for any sort of news app, and you're going to get dinged every time some flash report hits. But when you're here and that signal doesn't exist, that means that you're not going to see your news except maybe in the morning. And if you're a rancher or farmer or logger, you're not going to see it in the morning, because you're at 4 in the morning job, which means you're going to have a window to see it in the evening. And that's going to be a window dependent on whether you have time with the family or choose that as your option. And likely you're only going to consume news selectively over the week. And that's proving to be true. So that's really one of the big issues here on connectivity that I think that needs to continually be looked at. It takes a different way of valuing information, and it definitely goes back to more traditional mechanisms, which is print media and literally face-to-face engagement.
You know, Scott, is that much different than the way news and media traveled in Afghanistan, right? So if you're around Kabul, if you're around Kandahar or Mez, you got more inputs or more feedback, and if you weren't, if you're out in a little crap hole village of any name, your only media source was an imam or a mullah or whatever that broadcasted over the blue speakers from the center of town, right? So do you feel that those that are rural in these areas that don't have a lot of connectivity are almost having to trust and believe what little bit they get? And does that make the media being unbiased that much more important?
Mm.
Basically, there's a lot more acceptance in certain. There's acceptance and distrust. So let me hit with the acceptance first. They made a lot of effort to vote in a president, and that's President Donald J. Trump. They don't have a lot of patience for people not letting him do his job, because part of getting him into office was to get him to do the job, and now they can go back to do theirs. And the perspective is, we put somebody in office to change that place. We want him to change it. And if you talk to most people, they agree he's doing his job. What they despise is this media circus that keeps trying to derail what he's doing. So that's the distrust piece. What the media is actually doing is it's elevating it's giving more body to the narrative that President Trump ran on, which is that there is a cesspool up there. I don't even use the term deep state anymore, and I don't use swamp. I use cesspool, because that's basically what DC is. And so you've got this cesspool of rotten doing business. It's this totally immoral way of doing business that it sees it in their best interest to be above the law, to be outside of the voter responsibility or voter accountability,
and in their terms, they can do whatever they want despite what the voters say. That sort of ire and distrust that they already had out here is only being elevated as the media continues its ridiculous narrative. And here's the craziest part, which is what we said for the last 8 months on the Kilroy Project and the American brand, that was just reinforced today by O'Keefe in his work with Project Veritas, which is it's exactly the only reason not the only reason, one of the primary reasons they're doing this is that it's driving revenue towards their media channels. They don't care about truth. People out here work on a very simple principle, and that is that if you can't trust your neighbor and you can't have some sort of integrity with what you're doing, you're not going to survive out here.
Right.
And that's just fundamentally the way and communities, traditional communities are, because there's critical aspects to small communities which people still honor. One is integrity, one is humility, there's always humor, and there's this hard issue of faith and belief in the country and Constitution. The left pretty much takes all of that and flushes it down the toilet and says it's irrelevant because we see the world as one happy global paradise, which we all know is a bunch of garbage.
Right.
But that doesn't strike well here, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you brought up the Project Veritas. I was going there next to see. I mean, is that the is that going to silence some people? Is that going to the people that were screaming that President Trump was just going after the media and all he did is attack the media? You think that's going to is it going to quiet some of those, or is it going to enable some of those that have been saying this has been the case the whole time? Now we finally have proof of it, just like Project Veritas got us proof of what was going on in Planned Parenthood and everything else.
Well, here's what I find, because I talked to a journalist today, and it's quite interesting to me because immediately he reacted to O'Keefe as saying O'Keefe has no ethics in journalism, and I started laughing, seriously. I'm like, that's a bold thing to say coming from where journalists come from these days. But basically, what O'Keefe has done is he's done some of the classic. Look at O'Keefe more as an HVT type targeter or operation. We need the O'Keefes to get in there to rip away that scab and reveal very brutally what the truth is and target the individuals to hopefully take them down. And that's O'Keefe doing what has classically been kind of the Geraldo or even old 60 Minutes type interview process. He's doing anything different. It's just the journalism these days isn't anything. It's lost its whole purpose these days. Journalists are one level, they're storytellers. On the other level, they're information brokers. And the biggest things about journalists is their purpose is to drive traffic to their media site, whatever media they work from. So that means that headline wars and clickbait, those sorts of things are endemic in the way they write stories, which means there's literally no truth in anything they do, or at least very little truth. And it's hard to find journalists that have any sort of integrity. O'Keefe comes from a bias, which journalists hate. Journalists hate, they try to claim that they're non-biased, they're all biased. So O'Keefe is just open about his bias. He's just like, he can't stand this sort of liberal assault, and he's targeting people specifically. So I really look in the sense of military operations. O'Keefe is kind of the APT team. We've got, and then you have the groups like Breitbart and Drudge that are more like your mainstream operations. What American Brand is doing is the American Brand is more like the Special Forces team, because we're in the villages, we're building the relationships, and like I said, we're in phase 0 right now to try to build a connectivity between like organizations and like people as we move this thing forward.
Yeah, Scott, I mean, you said something earlier about the red counties basically being controlled. I think you said control, maybe. I would probably say oppressed by the blue state or the blue, whoever's in charge over them, whether it's, like some sort of state level potentially. And listening to you talk, I used the Civil War analogy earlier. I think that's probably not as good as it sounds like. More like sort of the difference between the American colonies and, say, somewhere between 1763 and 1775, post French and Indian War, pre-revolution. A lot of the things you're talking about, oh my God, man, it's like the parallels are, the individual issues might be different, but the sort of the pillars are the same, where you have this sense of a faraway oppressive government that doesn't represent my values, trying to force me to heal or to heed, whether it's taxes or whether I'm supposed to call this guy king and God or what. And and to me, it's just like the Tories against patriots. And the interesting thing is, the so-called liberals now, guess who they're playing the role of now? The oppressive Tories of 18 mid to late 18th century America.
I fully agree with you, and this is so in a sense of Troy's earlier question. There is a lot of repeating in history, especially our history. There has been a perpetual push to try to derail the Constitution since we were first established. And I think many people forget that when the Declaration of Independence was drafted, that if you were found in any British colony with a copy of the Declaration, it was that much of a threat to the empire. So when you hear the verbal violence, First Amendment, you see, but it's even worse because and this is where American Brain had, and it came directly from the work that I did in special operations, and then the continued analysis I did leading up to and through the election, was a simple fact that we are being besieged by basically an insurgency within our own ranks.
Mm-hmm.
And there exists no organization, whether it's FBI, DHS, whether it's going to be domestic CIA, whoever it is, there is nobody currently that has a mandate, nor do they have the authorities to take that battle on. And the only thing that you can take that battle on is to take it on in the realm of politics. And so that was why I set the American brand up as a 501c4, because not only can I be an openly biased media organization, which we are, I can also use legally a portion of my funds to dump them into PACs to fight aggressively without any rules to go after these elements that have to be defeated. So I do see this as a liberal war. And I would say this, if I was the only one saying this, I'd probably still question myself, but I've had so many great endorsements on the back side of people that are truly legends within the dark black ops community that are just basically saying, keep going, because you're on it. This is the way we have to fight this. And so what I want to jump on real quick, and I'm just going to follow this, I don't want to overtalk the time, and I know you got probably more questions, but I really want to hit, if I can, and if it's okay, I'm going to talk about the 4 pillars of the American brand. Are we okay with that?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes.
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so the American brand has got 4 pillars. What I'm doing right now in the Expedition Red is part of the first pillar, which is the creation of American Brand TV. American Brand TV is going to be an internet-based. I did a soft launch on it a few months ago. I did some tests on it. I pulled it back. We're going to be ramping this up to launch in the fall or late summer, fall. It's going to be internet-based. It's going to be a mix of video, written stories, and it's going to be podcasts. It's going to have a mix of personalities in there, but the whole principle is American storytellers telling the stories of Americans. So we've got a mix of things from commentary to socioeconomic discussions like small towns to just those common stories of day-to-day life that we don't get because for a multitude of reasons. One, we've lost local newspaper. Another is that mainstream media doesn't find it worthy of their time. The entire concept between the American brand is that becomes a membership site access eventually, and that's part of our self-sustaining model, and we want it to grow radically. So my target this year is if we can get about 5,000 good viewerships members on this thing, and we're targeting aggressively by 2020 to be pushing that upwards of 500,000 to 1 million viewerships. That's part of the information juggernaut, if you will, that we're creating for one. Pillar 2 is search, where I'm looking at some initial bankings to some digital companies, and we're talking to some bigger funders. But what we're going to be doing is doing a re-envisioning of what a library is for local communities. So that means doing some reinvestment to where we're getting American history taught in local libraries and more available. We're going to be looking at using in these small communities, providing libraries where there's hands-on
technical training and exposure, and then support for alternate education pathways outside of mainstream education. The third pillar, and I'll explain why these two are critical. The third pillar is a mentorship program that will be rolling out in 2018 for high school seniors to mentor with both training online and hands-on of what it's like to run a small business. Now, why those two areas are critical is we're trying to create an exposure to values outside of the corrupted education system, and we're hoping to get more and more seniors involved, and the vision is ultimately to get this to be a mandate for all schools, to where at the senior level, high school seniors have to have the experience of running a small business before they graduate. That is a critical juncture in their education, and by doing that, it's an ability to radically disrupt this liberal welfare state teaching that is just endemic in our entire education system. So those are two critical nodes to start building the next generation of leadership, small business leadership, and political leadership with our youth. The fourth element is the training of the next generation of red state political activists. That's open to all ranges of people, ages-wise, and the idea is to create this sort of techniques and capabilities, people for their working schedule, value-based, integrity-based, but at the same time understanding how to use the tools of opposition research, use the tools of information warfare, and the tools of community organizing to empower those people locally within small communities to start creating this sort of guerrilla army, if you will, of red state operatives. So those are our four pillars.
That's it sounds somewhat familiar to many conversations you and I've had. And for those that are just now tuning in, we were talking to Mr. Scott Kesterson from the American brand and now Expedition Red. So let's talk a little bit about Expedition Red. Are you self-funding this? Do you have donors? If you do, can people contribute? Can they help you along the way? Are there other things you need besides money they can help with? How could people help out and track along with what's going on?
That's a great question, Troy. Thanks. So right now it's all been self-funded, and that's been an interesting experience in itself. It's a tough one, but anyway, yes, we're constantly looking for donors and people that want to get involved and donate. And there's also things, and when you say there are other ways people can donate, there's already been a few of those happen. We've had a sponsorship from Remax Mountain Realty in Ennis, Montana, for example, that just purchased a drone for Expedition Red. It's a Mavic drone, which is fantastic. I'll pick that up next week when I'm there. Minds.com, which is a big social media platform I'm really pushing, is helping us build out our presence on their site, and they're a great group to work with. And for those of you who don't know Minds, check it out. It is really, I'm not trying to pitch it here, but the point is it's a really fantastic alternative to Facebook, and they're building it on the premise of First Amendment rights, which is very unusual, and encrypted data. So there's that sort of sponsorship. We're looking both for big and small donors. My biggest dream is that this becomes the small $10 and $20, $50 donor process to where we're able to build out that mass of followers, people doing that, to where this becomes the American funded program rather than the big donor program. Not that we're turning away big donors by any means, and I'm engaging them regularly, because there's an enormous amount of capital this is going to take to build out this vision. And because some of this has already been run and tested in a real war zone, it's not like I have to prove that it's been done. It's been done. It's been done massively successfully. So this is just that type of program on steroids and built for the American public.
Okay. So how long is Expedition Red? What do you anticipate it's going to last? How long will you be on the road doing this before you return to your home base?
So home base is going to become Ennis, Montana. That's been relocate there. Right now we're working out of an address in Bozeman, but eventually we'll settle into, I say we, there's a couple other folks, but primarily me, will be settling into Ennis. For now, the Expedition Red plan is to go on for about 8 months is my projection. It's going to be through the summer and fall, and to get through these red states and take the time. And part of this first leg has been kind of getting the workflows going. There's been some imperfect timelines, and that's being realistic about how long it takes
to get these stories. So, for example, this little community, I was just going to pass through in an afternoon here all this evening. I'm going to go camp. I'm going to come back morning tomorrow, and then like tomorrow afternoon, going up to John Day to meet with the sheriff and to do some other conversations up there and do some reporting. Rainbow Coalition, the hippie movement that settled into that community, their annual day forest. So say that 8 months is probably a real try to get us all the phase zero operations of this as we start to roll about June of next year and into that space for the pre-2018 elections. I think we'll be very well positioned to make a big impact.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's good, man. That's you know, I know you were very involved up to the last election and timing all that right. And now, you know, no idea that, I mean, this is really gearing towards the next one, and how important that is. Have you, were any of your just real curious if you can even say it on air and in public, were any of your hard works and your efforts that were done prior to the last election, you know, if they've ever been recognized? Have you ever heard anything on or off the record that the right people in the right places heard about that and knew what you were doing?
It's a great question. In fact, we do know that we had one of the senior military folks that was working, and I'll keep the name out. We had one of the senior military folks working on President Trump's advisory team actually link up with us when we were on up in Pennsylvania to let us know that they were very aware of us. They didn't really know where we were at first, which I laughed when I heard that. I'm like, apparently you didn't read our endorsement letter. But anyway, but you know how officers can be. That's what I can only add to that. So anyway, they definitely were aware of what we're doing. I've since had people refer to Kilroy, surprisingly, of how even the other day there was a radio broadcaster from Texas that I was on his show, and his comment was Kilroy was huge, and I was like, well, that's interesting because we thought it was. We didn't hear the volume of feedback, but keep in mind that a lot of times the way PACs are evaluated is by how much cash you generate, not by the amount of impact you've had. So the summation of the political impact that we had, we converted about 3,000 militia guys to vote for the first time in the Rust Belt states. You can do the numbers and see that impact. Those were huge numbers for Trump when it came down to there, and those were voters he was not reaching. We also collective social media impact, exposure we had on HBO to about 1 million people in about 40 days. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we're winding down. I know you have to get ready for your own American brand broadcast that you do every night at 9 p.m. Eastern, and then you do it every morning. Any final words for our listeners and viewers? Anything that we did not ask about that you'd like to cover or just remind them? Also, where they can find you and all that good stuff. Yeah,
how they follow you, support you that way, that sort of thing. Perfect question.
Yeah, great. So, hey guys, so listen, you can find us. You can find out about the American Brand on theamericanbrand.org, theamericanbrand.org, and it's also where you can donate. There's a 2-time-a-day show on our Facebook page, and I say this. It's been quite a hassle, but we are actually a certified Facebook page. So, I mean, you can tell we're real by looking at that little gray check mark that Mark Zuckerberg doesn't like to hand out too much. But anyway, so we're on Facebook, and I'm there twice a day, a morning at 7 a.m. Pacific, and I'm there at 6 p.m. Pacific every day. The exception will be tomorrow. Tomorrow will not be a live cast. It'll be a pre-recorded cast because of where I'm at. But otherwise, there's always some sort of a program at those times, whether it's pre-recorded or live. Most of them have been live. There's also our YouTube channel at The American Brand, and that's it's got a small following. We're really trying to build that out because there's a lot more content on YouTube than there is on Facebook. Also on minds.com/The American Brand is another place. And these are all our locations. Our Twitter is Expedition Red, and our Instagram is American Brand TV. So check us out on all those. Really drive into our homepage, theamericanbrand.org. We'd love to have you follow us. I think we've got a good mission. I really appreciate being on the show tonight, guys. Thanks for your time and all the airtime
time you gave it. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, no
God
problem.
bless
Scott.
you. Thanks for being with us. That's awesome what you're doing.
Yeah, stay in touch, brother. You want to come back on anytime, you know you're welcome. You want to give our listeners, viewers an update. Maybe if you're in a little bit better connected area, it'd be even great. But anytime, man, we want to keep it up. I think we see a lot of traffic going on our sites right now. I think you've gotten a lot of new interest, hopefully, and new followers. And I think people will love to keep hearing how things are going, especially, you got quite a few months in front of you as you're in phase 0. Thanks a lot for joining us, brother.
Well, hey, you bet. Thank you, and I'll be glad to come on anytime. So we'll keep in touch, and thanks again, guys. Have a great evening. God bless. And like I always say, we can never forget, God bless this great country.
Absolutely.
Amen, brother. God bless you.
Take it easy.
Take care out
Have
there.
a good one, brother.
Okay, thank you. For now.
All right. Okay. Oh, I lost Doug. Let me call him. Back. Wow. Okay. There's always something going on. So let me call Doug back. And here we go. I think he just told me, "Hey, you hung up on me." Here we go. Let me get him back here. Hey, Doug, how you doing? Sorry, I think I disconnected you.
Wow. That's okay. I was just talking to myself. It was awesome. But that was, what a great guy, and what a unique mission. And it's sort of, I love how it's so values based, and he's really getting truly the places that have been left behind in this country, economically, and no voice being given to them from, I don't even know how long. So I'm just kind of blown away by that.
Yeah, I mean, like we've talked about before the show, and those that have been listening to the show for a while know Scott and I are longtime friends. Like I said at the start, 11 years we've known each other. He and I have spent countless hours, both in Afghanistan and in the United States, talking. And a lot of times when he spent many years in Afghanistan, I would be talking to him over there through a number of different mediums. But it's amazing to see that he has taken what he not only learned but also developed a lot of in Afghanistan and brought that here. The parallels are striking yet kind of sad, right? We're not that much better, right? Look at us. It ain't like our elections are imperfect. We go around the world acting like we have to want other elections. Our elections aren't imperfect. Our people aren't imperfect. Trust me, I love America better than anyone else. We're the greatest country ever, but we are not perfect, and we make mistakes. And it is somewhat sad when you think about a country that is 2 weeks out of the Stone Age. When it comes down to people, they're not that much different, and things are going
right. That's a really good point, because I think we kind of lose sight of that, in our arrogance and stuff. But looking at those kind of areas where he was standing in, I mean, seriously, Troy, that could be anywhere 45 minutes to an hour and a half from where I am, man. Just a small, they don't even have a Dairy Queen,
right.
And that's a big deal in Texas. I mean, things like that, and you're just like, gosh, man, it's just. And it's very interesting, and his focus is sort of it's almost a counterinsurgency he's running, because the insurgency I guess would be against our values, our Constitution, and he's countering that.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
You're right, right?
And
the dictator, or the he who controls the media. Look at Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, anyone, Russia, Putin, anyone. He who controls the media. Right, this is right out of the playbook of that of communism and even George Soros. He who controls the media and controls the message and has all the power controls everything. The insurgency fight up against those, whether they're the Green Movement in Iran or what it is. Right, that's what this is. They're controlling the message. The sheep trottle along and believe whatever they hear and see.
Right.
And it takes that insurgency. It's my God, man. It's almost like Red Dawn.
I know, and exactly, and that's what I kept thinking of. Like, man, he keeps talking like this. I feel like we're some colonial guys in a tavern somewhere out in outside of in the rural area around Philadelphia or something. Going, hey man, I'm not digging this royal governor we have, and and a lot of the same challenges and problems they're having then are. I mean, wow, what. And you think we're so far removed from that, right? You think we're Oh yeah,
That's
it's
it,
not
right?
but
A lot of Americans get arrogant. They think, "Oh, we're that much better. Look,
right.
we're westernized. We have the Kardashians. We have unlimited internet. We have this. We have that." Not really. I mean, not when you just follow along and don't believe in, or you believe everything you're told and don't take the effort and the initiative to look into something yourself, right? And to question whatever's being force fed down your throat.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's something. And
wow.
man, like what you talked about, the Project Veritas thing that came out today. There's so much stuff going on. I mean, we could have had this if we didn't have Scott on the show. We'd have no shortage of
oh my god
things to talk about. I mean,
and I tell you what, Troy. I mean, what an interesting time. I mean, truly interesting times. I'll just go ahead and say it, blessed to live in, because I mean, every day, there's something going on, something happening, something being exposed. With our government and those in it, and I just I want to get to the truth, no matter how ugly it is, and I'm just like, excuse me, and it's just that's what I'm digging about what's going on. I mean, it's going to be really ugly and probably painful as we go forward, but we gotta get to the core problems, or we're never gonna be able to move forward effectively or for real. So it's just amazing, and he's part of it. Scott's sort of he's sort of the point of the spear, if you will, for some of this, and it's very interesting just to sit here and observe this. And I mean, I could probably log into Drudge or Breitbart right now since we've been on here and go, wow, what's happened in the last 45 minutes? Who knows? So
right, yeah.
But
well, just like say the O'Keefe thing, CNN. I mean, what, three people resigned the other day. I mean, you got Zucker there. You got all these people saying it's all for profit. They're driving their profits, and they know it's all BS, and there's no story. I mean, man, how does that not deflate everything the left's been trying to say? They
right. And that's yeah.
Shut up. Talk about real news, right? That should just be like, oh, this whole Comey, you can go home. Or not Comey, Mueller or whatever, you can go home, you can disband this whole. I mean, there's nothing here because no one else has found anything. The only one that kept us going was CNN and the mainstream, and the main, the biggest guy on the block when it comes to news, especially 24-hour news, CNN. Just admitted that there was nothing there. Can we get? Unlike Scott said, those people they want. America voted to put a billionaire in office. Now, most people would say, "Oh, how is he connected to the?" I mean, and that's a whole other topic. Is
sure.
He's more connected to the American working man and woman than Hillary was, or anyone that the left grew up. I mean, they could relate more to a billionaire who's had a great life, an easy life, and he didn't. He's worked hard, but he didn't have to. It wasn't like he had to pull him up, from the slums to do it.
Right.
But they more related to him than anyone else to put him in office, to give a chance. And as according to Scott, as we heard, right, people just want to let him do his job, because everyone else thinking he must be doing his job. Job is coming back. Coal factories are opening. Apple's going to start making devices here.
Making devices here.
Yeah, people are starting.
BMW is going to BMW is going to start expanding their operations in South Carolina. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just. And I guess we're selling India a couple $1 billion worth of hardware. I mean, it's just amazing. And if but Troy, sadly, so many of in our country, that's not their definition of good. And they're just sort of got they're 180 degrees out of phase, in my opinion. With you can't even define what's good with them. You can't even what's a good thing to you. And
well, you see
really weird.
Right? You see
really
Jesse
strange.
Waters do hit these things all the time where he interviews people on the street, and there's no shortage of these where they go interview people and talk about, maybe they'll say Obama policies or Obama things is done, and they'll portray it as Trump, and people will be like, oh, it's terrible, it's blah blah blah, or he'll say things that Trump has said or supports as Obama or Hillary, and they all like, yeah, that's awesome, yeah, you should be doing that. It's like, and how do you vote, much less procreate? Like, you're that. Dumb.
Man, there's so many things I don't know, dude. I just don't get. I don't know how some of these people even get through the day. Man, I don't know how they can get up in the morning. But God love them.
Everyone doesn't have to be experts about everything. I don't have to be an expert on
Exactly.
I don't have to be an expert on how nuclear fission works, and I don't have to be an expert on how to load a UPS truck or anything else, right? I have a job, I have skills, I have stuff I know how to do. But to listen to the news and to throw the BS flag and to investigate and to look into stuff, and investigate doesn't mean go read one alternative site. It doesn't mean go just because you hear it on 3 news sites. It's just dig into it yourself. Man, my God, we have Google, right? No one's having to go to encyclopedias anymore in the library to do a book report, right?
Right.
We have Google. You can go there and investigate. Just put it in any search engine you want, and just read alternative views. Read another perspective. That's why my blog, boohammer.com, and so many others became so popular over the last 10, 12, 15 years, is because the American people did not want to listen to what the mainstream media told them was happening in Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere. Right. That's the difference between a blog, a military blog, and a blog about real estate or fashion or whatever, right? They're just pumping themselves up and trying to get revenue. The military blogs are out there, telling the truth of what was really like for that person,
on the ground,
for that right on the front. Does it mean that's the truth for everywhere? No. Everyone has different experiences, but at least you get something besides where they court a reporter around to. Do that same kind of stuff, whether you go look at InfoWars or you go look at Breitbart or Daily Kos or Huffington Post or whatever. It just, people need to be a little bit more accountable.
Sure. Yeah, and curious and just sort of start to question some things, and it just seems like they just want to be on a team and want someone to speak for them, because that removes their responsibility to anything or for anything. And I think unfortunately, that's how some people define freedom now, is freedom from responsibility. So yeah, it's like, what did someone say? Someone had a great analogy, Troy. It was like the left wants everyone to look different but think the same. I think that was just that is just, man, write that, etch that in stone somewhere, because that's a great sort of overarching, thesis statement or whatever, because that's, man, there's so much truth there. I'm like, wow, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting to hear it out there, and thank God we have people like Scott that are, man, who knows how much money it's costing him investing time in his life to go out there and just get some stories out there. And so I hope people that are watching and listen to this interview or our show, go check out theamericanbrand.org. Go check out Expedition Red with an X at the beginning of it. And just go. I mean, he is putting up, I'm telling you, he puts up 2 videos a day. He's doing a Facebook Live video right now. I just got the notice. He does twice a day, and he's just out there talking to people, and he's talking about what he's observing. I mean, he's doing it for the American people. Not everyone can go do that, and he's just telling you what people are saying and what you see, and it's the facts as according to that local community that he's in,
Right.
And like he said, he's focusing on red areas in blue dominated states, right? Where the Chicago's dominated Illinois, New York City dominates Buffalo, Baltimore Buffalo dominates New York, Baltimore dominates Maryland, even though Maryland is pretty blue anyways, but you go to Northern California, it's country. You get out of LA and San Francisco, you get out in those asparagus farms and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's country in California.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
That is so true.
A lot of stuff going on tonight. We got a few more minutes. We're just going over a little bit to kind of talk about things.
Sure.
Toby and I usually do our bald man rant. Of course, you're not bald, but that's cool.
I am not.
You are opinionated. You have served this country. You have earned your right to have an opinion, and you're the guest host on here. So anything in particular.
And I appreciate you giving me a voice. I do. It's awesome,
dude. It's my pleasure. I'm glad you're able to come on. It's Toby's at a very solemn event today.
Amen, brother.
And we talked about it some last week. A good friend of his and Chad Robichaud. Chad was on last week. Was murdered, and I'll go into more of that later if Toby wants to. But we talked about it last week, and he was there at that service today, and hope God just strengthened him to.
Amen, brother. Yeah.
Watch that later, but yeah. So anyways, anything you want to rant on?
Let me think. I think it's interesting. This whole conversation kind of gets to the sort of my rant is sort of put a bow on it is just, you know, I just wish people would appreciate this country and what they have. This is such a unique, you know, I would argue God-given sort of, you know, antithesis to the whole flow of history that we're living in. Look, man, look, I'm drinking this bottled water that like costs more than probably like gasoline per pint or something, and I'm in this, you know, I'm in this house that's, you know, climate control, all this. I mean, it's just, anyway, it's just the whole, it's just so much to be appreciative of, and to recognize the blessings besides my family and my friends like yourself. And it just, you know, I'm just kind of in a place, I guess, in life where I'm like, man, I'm just trying to take it all in and just appreciate and not bitch, moan, and complain about, you know, I could fall into that, but I choose not to. And I'm just like, man, this is just awesome. And I'm just so happy to talk to great friends such as yourself, and everything that goes with it. And we're just so blessed. And I think it's almost like, obviously some people just can't handle it, and it just literally, I think, drives them crazy or something. So I'm just like, you know, and we're coming up on the 4th of July, you know, Independence Day, and it's just sort of, I'm just sort of focused on these things. I was like, God, you know, thank you, God. You know, it's just, you know, what did I ever do to deserve to everything I have? And I'm just so blessed and thankful for it all. And a lot of it's due to just, you know, this piece of real estate we call the United States of America. I was so blessed to be born in. So
yeah, absolutely. You're right. 4th of July is coming up. You know, Independence Day, it'd be a great time. A lot of things, you know, everyone gets patriotic then, which is awesome. Just like they do at Veterans Day and Memorial Day. But, you know, just remember why we have this holiday, just like those other ones. And, you know, it is, thank God we've had the people that have stood on the wall and done those things. And, you know, thankfully, most of the time, good leaders to help make the right decisions. But, yeah, it is, there's a lot of stuff going on in the news. You know, it is, you know, there's CNN's got the, you know, the things, you know, they've come home to roost, right? They've got to answer themselves. Thank goodness we have people like Project Veritas and others out there. But, no, I'm glad you were able to join me tonight. There's not much more to rant about. There's a lot to cover. Scott covered a lot tonight. So glad
he did. I mean, absolutely. I mean, he was great. I mean, that was a great, what a great guy, man. Yeah. God bless him.
And you know, he's doing a show now, so I don't want to cut too much into his show in case people want to jump over there in American Brand and see it. But yeah, you know, Toby and I were, just for people listening still and tuning in, you know, we were you know, kind of tossing up and down, back and forth, whether we were going to do our show next week or give it a break, since next Tuesday is actually the 4th of July.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I would kind of like to do it. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about being Independence Day, but at the same time, you know, we have our own families and want our own celebration. So I think right now we're going to take a break. I'd hate to do it, but, you know, stay tuned. We may take a break, but even if we do, I know he and I are both planning a whole bunch of, we get a lot of viewers and people that are on Facebook Live versus our Spreaker page.
Right.
But, you know, there is a, we do have a lot of folks on there, and they are, you know, they can tune in anytime, but we are planning a whole bunch of stuff to be happening over the few days following the 4th into the weekend. I'm going to be at a big event myself, and with a lot of great country music and people and Americans. So even if we don't do a show on Tuesday, I may be doing a lot of kind of on the street interviews, if you would. And stuff like I did at the inauguration, where I was at the inauguration.
That was excellent.
So
that was great.
Yeah, if we're not on next Tuesday, like I say, I don't think we are, but stay tuned to our Facebook page and our website. We will be a lot on through the week, and hopefully people tune in there. Be sure you check us out at stewandthenunn.com, and then from there you can hit our Facebook page, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. And I got to talk to Toby. We may want to look into doing a YouTube channel feed. Because Scott was right. There's a lot of content on YouTube. Not everyone is on Facebook.
It's true.
A lot of people are still getting off Facebook. So that may open us up another avenue to help get this show out and the message out. But Doug, like always, brother, man,
hey.
We've known each other a really long time. Our children were babies, and now they're all graduating college. So,
dude, 25 years now.
Yeah. 25
years. 1992, my brother. Yes. Can you believe that's like literally half my life, half our lives.
It is, it's crazy. But thank you for joining me tonight, filling in for Toby, and I'm looking forward to seeing
you for having me.
Seeing you next month. We'll be able
to look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Casa Dave Mullen is open and with open arms to you. So we're all looking forward to seeing you, man.
Absolutely awesome. Well, with that being said, I'm going to wish you and all of our listeners and viewers a good night. And we'll talk to everybody later. See you maybe next week. We'll definitely be seeing you next week somewhere, maybe not at this time. So thank you very much, Doug. Thanks a lot.
God bless everyone. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Stu and the Nunn Radio. We hope you enjoyed your time with us because we have enjoyed sharing our time with you. Be sure to check out stewandthenunn.com in addition to asking us questions and interacting with us on our Facebook page and Twitter. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern here on Spreaker and Facebook Live. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Warrior Media Solutions, PoohHammer.com, Veteran Outdoors, Graybeard Publishing, and Mighty Oaks Warrior Foundation. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Thank you again, and have a good night.